Welcome to this demo of the Hawkular Business Transaction Management project version 0.3.0 Final. There's two parts to this release that I'm going to be demoing. The first part relates to the way that information is collected, and the second part is related to the integration with the RTGov project. So in terms of the first part, in the previous release, what we were doing is collecting information based on instrumentation rules associated with technologies used to execute the business transactions. So what this could do is it can give us the structure of the business transaction, but it doesn't give you any additional transaction-specific information. So in this release, what we've done is we've added the ability to extract like business transaction-specific information. So this can be used to extract correlation information, for example. So in cases where two separate business transaction fragments may not be connected by default, then you can use information carried in the business transaction, like an order ID, for example, as a way to link the fragments. It's also possible to add information from the message content into the information that's stored on the business transaction management server. So in case you want to be able to examine the payload information at a later date. And you can also extract specific properties from either the payload content or the header properties. So for example, an item ID or a customer. So you could then use that information later on to do sort of further business analysis. So what we're going to do is show some of that configuration information. If you've seen the previous demos, you may recognize that some of these files here are related to the instrumentation rules. What we've done is we've also added a couple of additional configuration files related to the SwitchArt multi-app demo and the RTGov order management sample. If we have a look at this file, this is the one that contains relevant information in terms of being able to extract business specific details. So as before, you can define a business transaction, you give it a unique name, and you can define inclusion filters. So that basically is enables the information that's captured from the collector to check whether if it matches this regular expression in the URI, then it means that business transaction is associated with this name. So it then associates that name with the fragments that's reported to the server. So the part that's been added is a list of processors. So in this case, we've got two processors here. And these define how the information associated with this business transaction should be processed. So the first element is a node type. In both of these processors, we're just dealing with service nodes. But you could also have node types of consumer, producer, and component. Then the next step is to identify whether you're interested in the request part of the interaction or the response. So this one's for the request and this one's for the response. Then there's other criteria you can add. So these are kind of matching criteria to identify whether this processor should process the information that's been captured based on the instrumentation rules. So in this case, it's a URL filter. It's another regular expression, and optionally, because this is a service type node that's been identified, it can have an optional operation name. So once these criteria have been met, then it applies a list of actions. Most of the actions have a name, which, depending on the context, can be used in different ways. This first action is related to, or the action type is called add content. So this is an example where you want to be able to retain some or all of the message content and be able to store it in the business transaction information for later use. The name is not particularly important, it's just a label. So if you happen to want to extract different parts of the message content and they had different sorts of meaning, you could give them a meaningful name. And then in this case, because it's got message content, being able to identify its type may also be useful for later processing. Then the other part of interest is the expression. This is an MVAL expression, that's used to process the information and to extract the parts that are relevant. We have at the moment just a single helper class called XML helper, so we'll be adding further helper classes in the future. But so this one basically just serializes the information that is passed into a text format. So the next action is add correlation ID. So with the correlation IDs, there's a scope, so you can either have global, which means it's globally relevant to the business transaction. You can have local, which means it's only that correlation ID is only relevant within the local application or service. Or you could say that it's a correlation ID is scoped to the single interaction. So this is where two parties are communicating, so the correlation ID is unique to them. And again, you have an expression that allows you to identify. So in this case, the correlation ID is extracting an order ID using an XPath expression. And then the other type of action here is set property. Properties are basically business relevant information that you can maybe want to query the business transaction on later. So in this case, we're extracting a customer and item ID. And then if we go down here, this is dealing with the response. So in this case, this property is dealing with a total that's been calculated based on this submit order operation. Then the final part of the configuration is you can define a set of properties. Ideally, what you should do is actually put all the property information into a single JSON file, just because all the JSON files essentially get merged, but it's just included here for completeness. Okay, so what I do now is I'm going to start up a server. So this is actually the RTGov server that's got the business transaction management gateway embedded into it. So it has all the necessary jars and the configuration files available. The only thing we need to do is basically run a script. So first thing we do is we set the JBoss home environment variable, and then within the bin directory there's a script that we've added which basically sets up the Java ops environment variable. So if I have a look here, so that includes a reference to the Java agent jar. There's configuration, there's a URL to the actual server. So you'd need to edit this script if you were going to be running the business transaction management collector on a different environment to where the RTGov server was. And similarly, there's your username and password. They've been set up to default, but they may need to be changed as well. Okay, so I'm going to start up the server. So while I'm waiting for that, I'll bring up a browser so that we're going to see the RTGov UI. So just to recap, the information that's going to be collected from the executing applications is actually going to be using the business transaction management collector instead of the RTGov event interceptor. And that information is going to be reported to a business transaction management gateway that will translate the information related to the service nodes into RTGov activity events. And those activity events are then processed by the RTGov server as they would do any information that would have been collected using the RTGov client. One of the benefits of the business transaction management approach is it's less intrusive because it's just using byte-man instrumentation rules, whereas the RTGov approach is has been to define mechanisms in the code to intercept events. So it makes it easier to be able to instrument a lot more technologies. Okay, so if we start up the RTGov UI, it's just using the default username and password. And so I'll go into the Cabana analytics part. As you can see, there's no events at the moment. This is a clean environment. Also, I look at the situation page. So now what I'm going to do is run some example business transactions through. First of all, there's the SwitchYard multi-app, so I'm going to use the JMS client to send in a request. And this example is made up of two different services that are going to interact over HTTP. Okay, so in this case they've also created some SLA violations, so these can be seen here. But if I go to the analytics part, we can see there's two services here. These are the public services. So the JMS interface goes into a service called order and input, which then indirectly sends the message to the order service. But if I look at the internal services as well, so not just the public ones, so you can see there's actually 4 services, and so these 2 are private. Right. So now if I send a request to the RTGov order managing example, okay, so that's sent in so a basic request. So okay, so it's refreshed. So we can see there's the multi-app ones and there's the order management example ones. So if I just actually if I disable refresh for a second, and then if we go down to, if we look at the details of the activity events that have been reported via RTGov, I just want to show you some of the properties. So here's customer property. So these fields have been extracted using these additional processor elements within the business transaction management project. So we've got customer, we've got item here, and total. Yeah, so these were extracted using XPath expressions. Okay, so I'll put the refresh back on. Right, so if I just put some more examples through. So this order to example generates an item not found exception. Okay, so that's been picked up. So that's now reflected as a fault. And I'll generate another one that's going to cause an SLA violation. So again, if we go back here, we see that there's some more violations. And finally, I'll send another request in that's actually got a badly formed XML message. So if I refresh here, so we see here it's reported it. There's a call trace that's shown an error. And then if we look at the message content, so again these messages here are being extracted using the add content action that I showed previously in the configuration file. So now if we resubmit that, so that's gone through successfully. And if we look at the Kibana analytics board, this handler exception is reflecting the one where the message was incorrectly formed. Okay, so that's it for the demo. If you have any further questions, I can be reached on the Hawkular IRC channel, or if you want to play around with the software, if you have any issues or new features you'd like to see, then please record them in the Hawkular BTM Jira system. Thank you for watching.